13 love, 13 knowledge, 13 wisdom, 13 respect. This is your creation 13. Honoring. What does that look like? Um, along with love and respect, right? Love, honor, and respect. Honoring has been something I've really been digging deeper into, and it really goes into where you're at in life. How do you view life? What's important to you? Is there anything important to you? What what value do you present, or what value do you worship? Right? Is that value worship more than yourself or others? Right? Which go into idol worshiping, materialism. Um, Honoring ancestors. What kind of ancestors do you honor? Animals. Honoring animals. The animal kingdom. There's a lot of things to look at as a whole with honoring. And as I learn, and as I listen to others that surround me, learning about what to honor, when to pray, when to meditate, what kind of rituals, if there is any, what there is, but do we partake in within a day, a time frame, things of that nature, right? There's just so many things that we can look at as a whole to make it simple, right? You have to learn about yourself first. You have to learn to love yourself. You have to learn to honor yourself. You have to pay respect to yourself first, which means eating right, cleanliness, taking care of yourself, becoming self-aware. That's huge, right? I was talking about that in previous videos. Becoming self-aware of your actions, right? One of the things the church always teaches you is that you're dirty and filthy and a sinner, things of that nature. What does the world teach you? You're dirty, you're filthy, you're a sinner, you don't have a mind of your own, you can't think. Throughout television and movies, it started in 2000, 2001. They started dumbing down the United States audience, right? The United States audience, dumbing people down into a category, and actors. At the end of the day, actors. They teach you how to be actors. I'm a big Japanese animation fan, and it's gone to the kids. It's gone to the teenagers where they act out their favorite anime character, and then they go out into the world and portray themselves that way. And it's an act. It's an act because they don't understand themselves, and they don't know how to be themselves. So they create a persona to honor a character, but in doing so, they lose honoring and respecting themselves at the end of the day. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. At the end of the day, there's so much things you can talk about honor, right? Christ is my rock and foundation, so I honor Christ, right? But just like I've been learning, we also have to learn to honor the heritage that Christ brought to the table. Like, who was the father, or the root word for that would be like a chief or a leader, right? Who was the leader that taught Christ? What was the lineage of that leader, right? Because in the English translation, we learned that it's God or the Lord, which are two different deities. So it really gets into some really interesting elements there. So what is that lineage that Christ honored? And we have to go back to that and find out that lineage, find out that honor. Just like today, I was working out and just feeling the fire, what people call the Holy Spirit, just engulfing me, and I just felt the ancestors around me, and I was just embracing and holding my chest and just feeling all the love and all the hard work um, that our ancestors did, for presenting the message of Christ, being ridiculed and persecuted in doing so, because what Christ taught was against everything that the churches came before, right? The traditions that came before. Those traditions before Christ were of man, and they were what they are today. Idol worshiping, a lack of honor, and just a lack of understanding spirituality, right? The elements of spirituality, right? They got religion down, but they've lost what Christ taught, or the hidden messages behind it. Because of Truth Seekers School of the Mystics, looking into Peter a little more, it's very interesting. But looking into Peter more, Petra, it actually goes deeper than that. But in the Vatican, man, it's weird. But they created this throne, that is humongous, and it's very, very interesting. And I got a lot of interesting ideas behind that throne that is definitely very interesting, a little alarming, just because there's some things that the puzzles are being moved together. And I think I froze, so I'm going to keep talking just in case. But my camera's probably overloading here. But it was just very interesting to learn about Peter and how he was still teaching Christ's message. But because he was doing so, he was getting persecuted too, because Christ died despite everything else that we're taught in church. Christ did not die for our sins, because that's a deeper word. Christ's true death was to be a example. He created heresy among the people because the traditions were being broken by Christ and his disciples. And that's the true story at the end of the day, right? But here's the kicker, that Christ was teaching his disciples was the honor of call upon my name and I'll be there. You will always remember me, remember my name. And that's what we need to learn to do as well. If we're honoring ourselves, we need to honor our name. We need to share our name, right? We need to share our name out there, because just as Christ said, we're going to do greater things than him. Church always forgets about that. That the people who follow Christ, or the true chosen ones, or the prophets, the seers, the oracles, that's huge, are going to do greater things than him. So that means there is more than one, what? One Christ. That's interesting, isn't it? So, and that goes into honoring. So you're not getting out of line of your own agenda, because that's what I was just sitting back and honoring the ones, just really just thinking about history, and I've been learning about the saints because of True Seeker. Just really learning all the persecutions that these people went through, because the stuff they presented would get you killed because it's against tradition, right? That's what happened to Christ. Christ was set as an example to everybody. So with the knowledge of Christ, they would publicly share the traditions, but privately they would share Christ teachings or the ancient ancestor teachings in private. And as they were going in, getting older, or preparing to be murdered one way or another for heresy, they would hide their scrolls. They would hide their teachings in different locations, right? And that's where history is, right? That's kind of how the Bible was found, but that's how all of ancient traditions were found, is that they were buried in different locations. So as I'm sure the oracles or the prophets foretold that the ancient ancestors' history would be erased from, I can go by the natives, like from the spider people, or from the wicked ones, right? Those who are all about conquer and divide. That's what happened. That's what the Roman Empire was all about. And who runs today? Caesar and the Roman Empire, which it's crumbling now. And once the Roman Empire crumbles, things change. It's going to happen. It's going to happen in this lifetime. A lot sooner than later. How that looks, I don't know. I do predict that 2030, right? Yeah, I think so. Somewhere around there, between 2028 and 2030, you should be seeing drastic changes if it doesn't start next year, right? It's nothing to be scared of. That's at the end of the day, that's what we have to learn about honoring, is also being respectful and also becoming a leader for others. But not everybody's made to be a leader. There's people who are followers, and that's just as honorable, because a leader needs helpers to continue the message of the ancestors, right? I talked a lot about ancestors back in the day, but as I had to deconstruct myself, keyword deconstruct, you have to deconstruct yourself to learn new things, because otherwise you get stuck. You will be limited, and this is why it's so important, and why I talk about selectiveness, is because once you are very selective in narratives, in doctrines, things like that, you don't learn, you don't grow, and you forget why you had a spiritual awakening. You forget where those traditions came from. You forget where that knowledge came from, and you forget that this stuff was talked about previously. It was hidden and forgotten. So we have to, as we research, we don't claim the research, but we're discovering the research, right? It's huge. So like the stuff I talk about is just bringing it back. Like, I really don't think you guys feel it's important on some of the subjects that I bring, but it is important because people don't look into all the Egyptian heritage. People don't look into the Sumerians. People don't look into origin stories, right? Big on comic books. The origin story of things, because if you're selective, say you're just a Christian, you're going to be selected with Christ and that's it. Everything else is going to be considered false gods. Well, if you found out the Bible talked about all of the previous heritage, the ancestors of the Sumerians and stuff, that changes things. You can prove it's in there. And when you prove it's in there, that opens up a bigger doorway of, oh wow, so this is part of history. They weren't bad guys. Or were they? That's something that I discussed previous video. Because that's going to be discussed a lot more about the animal kingdom. A lot, because that's very interesting. But at the end of the day, this video is a little longer than I wanted, but honoring. Do a self-reflection of honor. Like, who do you honor? What do you honor? Why do you honor? How do you honor? Right? Do you honor and respect yourself? That's huge. If you can't honor and respect yourself, how in the world do you expect to love, honor, and respect others? It's not just humans, but animals and all living things. Nature, spending time in the sun, right? It gets big. It gets, I wouldn't say complex, but it's just, there's a lot of potential that you're missing out. You're missing out because you're so focused or imprisoned by yourself and your selectiveness at the end of the day. So learn to honor. Do some research into the ancestors. Man, just keep going down the rabbit hole that you're led, right? Your spiritual foundation is key at the end of the day. You got to have guides to help you. Christ is the good starting point. But we also have other guides, just like, I experienced today. It's like, who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? I just want the loving ancestors in my life. I want the ones that came before that shared the love of Christ, but also that shared the knowledge and wisdom of the stars and of the times to pray under the sun, how to honor that, how to ascend above this reality, right? That knowledge I honor, and I definitely want to honor them back by presenting and sharing it to the world as well. So it gets deep, it really does. So I'm going to end it at that. So love yourself, keep shining bright, love, honor, and respect. Practice that. Practice that with yourself, practice that with others, practice that with animals, practice that with nature. Write it down, your strengths in it and your weaknesses in it, and work on those weaknesses so you can build strength and become love, honor, and respect. So yeah, I could talk forever. So love yourself, keep shining bright. I'll talk to y'all later.